I have your brain scanned and permanently backed up in case something terrible happens to you, which it's just about to.
We're going to go ahead and move on to step 11 here. As I was laying the parts out for step 11, you really do need to be careful on this particular step. There's a lot of pieces here, and there's actually a lot more going on than what looks like when you first glance at the directions. Lots of little parts. Take real good care as you're taking parts off of the trees. Make sure you're reading the proper tree number, because there are several parts in here that do look similar but are not. For instance, the little rod ends here are coming off tree number 32. And there's also, that's this little unit here, there's also a tree number 30 or number 005 that looks very similar as far as the parts go, but they are made out of a different material, I believe. So make sure that you find the proper parts trees and go ahead and make sure that you follow each step and lay each one of your parts out on your paper, and we're going to multiply this times 4. And there are several pieces and parts, so don't forget any. As you're taking the little pistons off the trees, you want to be very careful, and that is on this bottom shaft photo that you see in your directions. They come off of tree number 32, part 5. And there are, let me see if I can do this without dropping, there are a little piston that have ridges on it. And when you take that off of the tree, you're going to make sure that you don't slice off one of the little protrusions that's on that piston, because that's what makes them helps restrict the flow as they're going up and down inside of the shock, and you don't want to make one different than the other. If you're following along, I'm going to go ahead and build one shock straight through, and we need to do that times 4. If you want to, we're going to go through each individual step, and you can stop if you're following along, which a lot of people do with these videos. If you're following it along, pause and go ahead and replicate that with the other 3 and just build them all at the same time. It's probably a lot quicker. But for now, because I'm an idiot, we're just going to build one. I'm going to start on the top here, and let's start at the top here. We're going to go ahead and grab one of the little caps, which is on tree number 29, part 4, and it's a little cap with a hole in it. There you go. It's threaded on one side. When you break that off, again, trim it all up real nice and make sure, because these are plastic and they're threaded, and we don't want anything to get in the way. We're going to go ahead and set that down, and the next part, we're going to get one of 2 of these little orange shock rings. See if we can get the focus in there. What you're going to want to do with that, there's a product that you can go buy by Team Associated, which is industry standard for any bodybuilding shocks. It lasts forever. I've had this tube for years and years. And it's Associated part number 1105, green slime. And we use that for building shocks. If you don't have any, you can go ahead and use some of the 30 weight oil that came with your kit in place of the green slime. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some green slime or some oil, put it on our finger, and you can just use as much as you want of it. And what we're going to do is lube up our little shock rings here and get plenty on there. And again, you can do this with your shock oil. We're going to go ahead and take the first O-ring, just one of the 2, and drop it down inside the threaded portion of the cap. And then we are going to take a teeny tiny little plastic part off of tree number 32, part number 4, which is just a little plastic O-ring. We're going to lay that down on top, like so, and then we're going to go ahead and put in the second O-ring. We're just making a little O-ring sandwich, just like so. So we have an O-ring, plastic washer, and an O-ring. Now we're going to go ahead and take one of our shock bodies and we're going to use the small end here. We're going to go ahead and screw that on. Since this is the first one I've built, I just noticed a much easier way to do it. What we're going to do is just screw that. If you did it that way, just screw it on real slow and everything's going to fall in place. If you feel any excuse me again. If you feel anything binding up, stop. And what you're going to want to do is go ahead and build it from the bottom this way. If you see on the threaded end that's kind of hollow in there, go ahead and put an O-ring, one of the orange ones, then the black washer, and then another O-ring, and then put your lid on your little cap. But you can do it either way. I was just looking at the way the directions were, and I didn't pre-build it and look at my parts, so that's the way it is. Put it on. You don't need to over-tighten it. Just make sure it's snug. Go ahead and repeat that process on your other shocks. Now we're going to take one of our spring retaining rings, and you'll see that there's a collar on here. We're going to go ahead and screw this in with the collar going down towards the cap we just put on. Go ahead and probably screw it on, let's just say halfway. It'll probably be less than that, but that's what it's going to look like. The next thing we're going to do is to build the shock shaft itself. So we're going to go ahead and grab one of the shafts, and there's two small ridges in here. We're going to go ahead and put one of the tiny metal E-clips on to the bottom of the two. See if I can do this without dropping it on the ground. I'm going to show you before I push it on, but it's going to go on to the bottommost groove inside. We're going to go ahead and press that on. You can use a pair of pliers, or I just go against my workbench on this bottom one. Once that's on, you're going to want to make sure that it's completely on. This one wasn't. And how you do that is you turn it and make sure that it turns within that groove. And if it turns without popping off like that one did, then you know they're on properly. And they do get tricky. They have to go on just perfectly straight. Once it's on, you should be able to swivel it around. This is not focusing in, is it? Focus. It has ADD. It should be on there without coming off. Now we're going to take one of the little pistons, which is on tree number 32, part 5. There's also another piston on there that you can use to tune, but we're building to the instructions, so we're using piston number 5. We're going to go ahead and drop that over the top so it rests on the little E-clip that we just put on. And then we're going to grab a second E-clip and we're going to install it on top, just like so. And then go ahead and clip it on. See if we can do this without shooting it across the room. There we go. And again, when a C-clip is installed, always make sure that it rotates. Because if it doesn't rotate freely, that means it's not sitting in the groove properly and will pop off. Excuse me again. My goodness. Cat's got my throat. Once this is together, you should be able to hold on to the piston and freely turn it, the shaft. And that piston should be somewhat loose on there. And that's what that's going to look like. Now we're going to find a part that we forgot to get out. And it's part number AXA 1358. And I'm not quite sure where to find that or what it is, so I'm going to turn off the camera. And it looks like some sort of a little spacer. So I'm going to turn off the camera and find that and be right back. Yeah, they were actually pretty easy to find, and I didn't even need to turn the camera off, but I did. They were actually in the parts B bag that were still in my tray, and they're actually little rubber bumpers is what they are. They're soft and pliable. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to get our green slime or use some of our oil, And we're going to put this on the shock shaft, and we're going to concentrate heavily on the thread area, because what we're going to do is push the shock shaft down through those rings that we put on, and if it's not lubed up properly, it's going to rip those rings and cause our shocks to leak. So we're going to be very, very generous with the amount of lube that we're going to put on there. Going to go ahead and put the shaft down inside, and you're going to feel it sit down in there and hit that rubber O-ring. What I want you to do is just very gently just kind of wiggle it a little bit and push. You don't want to just shove it in there, because you will rip that O-ring and your shock will leak. So just very, very gently push it through, and then you're going to feel the edge where the threads end. You're going to feel that, and again, that's another point that can rip. So you want to feel that hit and just very gently work that through until it comes in. Go ahead and pull that all the way down, and you can wipe off a little bit of the lube that's on the threads. Next thing we're going to do is insert our little rubber baby buggy bumper. Going to go ahead and slide that over the shaft like so. Then we're going to put on one of our shock ends, and we're going to very simply just thread that on. Now what's going to happen is this shaft is going to turn, and it's going to be hard to actually hold that shaft and get that on. So we need to hold this shaft with something. You don't want to just grab it with pliers. I actually have a pair of shock pliers that I use that's made out of soft aluminum that's going to grab that shaft. However, I can't seem to find them at the moment. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of paper towel and fold it over several times so it's nice and thick. And I'm going to wrap it around the shaft and hold it with a pair of pliers. But you want to make sure that you don't gouge that shaft or damage it in any way. That allows me to hold it and to put the shock ends on. What you're going to do is screw those on just until it bottoms out, no further. Don't keep cranking on it. If you're unsure, back it up a little bit and go slowly just until it bottoms out. What you want to do is make sure that all 4 of your shock shafts are the same length when that's done. And how I do that is I make sure it's pulled all the way out, then I lay it against the edge of something. In this case, I'm going to use my manual, and my pen is gone. Of course my pen is gone. So what I'm going to do is just mark the very end of the shock shaft. I'm just going to put a little cut in the paper. It's real small to see. So what I'm going to do is each time I build a shock, I'm going to hold it right to the edge of the paper, and I'm going to peer up and make sure that it comes right to the edge of that mark that I made. If the shock is too short, then I'm going to back this off a little bit. If it's too long, then I'm going to screw it in a little bit more. And they all need to be even for your best performance. You can feel those go in and out. We're getting closer to being done with this step. Next thing we're going to do is to grab one of the little swivels, and again that has a lip on one side and no lip on the other. We're going to go ahead and put that in. I'm going to see if the edge of my bench works here and press it on just like so. Make sure you don't bend your shock shaft if you're doing it that way. There you go. We are done with this step number 11. Go ahead and repeat that for the additional 3 shocks.
Do not touch the operational end of the device. Do not look directly at the operational end of the device. Do not submerge the device in liquid, even partially.